to Parliament in Cape Town, where DA leader John Steenhuisen is meeting with Ukraine ambassador. Let's just listen in.
Utterances of Mr. Dugmore, Mr. Mbalula, Ms. Lindiwe Zulu and other senior ANC leaders have shown quite the opposite, that it's more a solidarity with the Russian Federation, and because of the emotional ties the ANC has with the USSR, those are now loyalties have clearly been transferred to Russia. They forget that Ukraine was also part of the USSR when solidarity was shown in the fight for freedom in South Africa. We've also then launched a campaign where we'll be providing T-shirts, and this is an initiative spearheaded by Anton Bradell and others, where we'll be providing T-shirts to people. It's 30 Rand from the sale of each of the T-shirts is going to be put into a fund which we will assist Ukraine with humanitarian relief, particularly for civilians who've been displaced as a result of the refugee crisis. So, Ambassador, I wanted to say that, and to show very visibly, that we stand with Ukraine, that we are in solidarity with you in the situation unfolding there, and that we will continue to put pressure on the South African government to do something to end the Russian Federation's invasion in Ukraine. But we won't allow them today to get away with a veneer of impartiality when they clearly have picked a side. And I wanted to give you a shirt as well, which I'll give you before you leave, and you'll be able to take it back, and as a symbol of our solidarity as well with Ukraine.
Thank you.
I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Ambassador.
Good day. It is war in Ukraine, Russian war, real war. Today, African voices are important as ever. South African voices are important. Each of you, I want to feel that pain that now our mothers, sisters, brothers, fathers, children are feeling when one country decides to come to another country to change it without its will. You know, when you are sitting in your house, in your home, and someone is coming to you with a gun and started to kill you, just because maybe he or she doesn't like what TV program you are watching. So that's exactly what is happening now, but the price is very expensive. I'm grateful for the support of the province, of the city, of DA. I'm ready to speak to every one of you. I'm ready to speak with every political party if they want to talk to me. I'm ready to speak to every city in South Africa, in continent. We need you. We can stop it. Every day matters. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yep. I don't know if there's anyone would like to ask any questions or pose any...
Yes. Just a question to the Ambassador, please.
Sure.
Ambassador, has the South African government approached you as the embassy to facilitate access to your president or to talk about negotiations?
No.
What has been your take on the South African decision on abstaining in the United Nations General Assembly?
We are speaking today during the Human Rights Month. What unites Rainbow Nation of South Africa? The struggle that you passed through, this fight for human rights. Today, in my country, human rights are violating every day, and not only. We are experiencing huge war crimes. South Africa cannot sit on the fence in this case. I'm sorry.
And your take, John?
Yes, well, I think that I'm really embarrassed at the stance taken by South Africa at the United Nations General Assembly. I don't think, as Dante said, that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of great moral crisis, choose neutrality. You can't be neutral in this particular situation, and the moral equivalence that the South African government is trying to set out between Ukraine and the Russian Federation is like an elephant standing on a mouse, and then you want to blame the mouse for being aggressive with the elephant. There clearly is a disproportionate balance of forces here, and it's evidence there. Violence is not the answer. It never has been the answer, and we need to ensure that peace breaks out in that region there. But you can't have peace if you're not prepared to stand up to bullies. One of the things Helen Suzman famously taught us was to stand up to bullies. And she taught us to stand up to bullies because she said if you do not stand up to a bully, then you embolden that person, and they will carry on with their behavior, and they will carry on bullying more people. It's time now for the world to stand up to Vladimir Putin, and it's time for the South African government to understand that there are going to be long-lasting implications for their attempts at neutrality in this, which is nothing other than a thin veneer of support for the Russian Federation and for Mr. Vladimir Putin. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that the president was very proud of his bromance with Vladimir Putin, and he was very proud to put it on the social media channels last night in the interest of what he says getting the full side of the story. Why then has he not done the same with the Ukraine president? Why has he not spoken to the Ukraine ambassador here and to Ukraine's ambassador here in South Africa? And it just shows that they're attempting to, ahead of the debate next week, put some veneer of respectability on their moral treachery in this particular matter.
Straight to John and the ambassador. Do you, South Africa's position aside right now, do you think South Africa can play a mediation role in this particular situation? We have seen our former presidents take on such roles elsewhere on the continent, for example. Do you think South Africa could play such a role?
I already answered once this question, and I strongly believe that His Excellency Mr. Ramaphosa is a brilliant mediator. There was a time when we could speak about diplomatic solution only. Now, in order to be able to mediate, you have to name the things as they are. So we have to say this is the war, the Russian troops are killing Ukrainian people, and to mediate this process. If the president will do it, I'm sure he will be able.
I would hope that South Africa would have taken its rightful place amongst the nations of the world in terms of fighting for the very human rights and open democracies, respect for international and sovereignty that the liberation movement fought for in South Africa. But that has not been a consistent position of South Africa, both locally and internationally. So we've seen a blind eye being turned in places like Zimbabwe because it was uncomfortable because of past relationships with the Liberation Party and Mr. Mugabe and his regime. I think that to be an excellent mediator requires you to be an honest broker. And I'm afraid that South Africa has, I believe, compromised its ability to be an honest broker. Why do I say that? Well, on the very day of the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation and the Russian Federation's army, you had our defense minister clinking champagne glasses with the Russian ambassador toasting the might of the Russian Federation's army and their armed services. I don't think that sends a message out to the rest of the world that we can be an honest broker in this situation. What South Africa should do, though, at the very least, is to try and get back onto the right side of history in this matter and actually use the opportunity in the debate next week to speak out against the atrocities, to speak out against the aggression of the Russian Federation, and to place us firmly with those nations in the world that respect international law, respect the rule of law, and respect the sovereignty of other countries, and to do that and to do it consistently.
Mr. Steenhuisen, sorry, another question from my side. There are people who will say that DA is being hypocritical here. In the sense that very recently in fact at the moment the people in Afghanistan who are suffering and who are actually dying every day as the consequences of a war started by the United States. The DA hasn't gone out to say we stand with the people of Afghanistan, because people die. And the DA says that government of South Africa cannot be neutral in this case, but the DA has consistently said that government of South Africa needs to be neutral when it comes to the Palestinian issues. What do you say to that? You say when they support the Palestinians, they are taking themselves out as honest brokers, but now you want them to be not neutral.
First of all, I would encourage you to go back and check the public record. I was incredibly critical of the Biden administration and the mess that they've created in Afghanistan. And I said so at the time, and those comments were very widely covered. I don't agree that war and aggression is a solution to any of the problems that we face around the world. And if anybody can demonstrate the fact that negotiation and peace-seeking and consensus-seeking is the best way to resolve your problems, I think South Africa is the shining beacon of that example. As related to the Middle East, what we cannot reduce every conflict to is about whataboutism, because then what you're doing is equating situations in different parts of the world with different dynamics and using it as an excuse not to condemn wrongdoing. There have been numerous debates in the parliament behind me on the situation in the Middle East. Mr. Mandela has brought many motions to the floor of Parliament around the situation in the Middle East. We've debated it ad nauseum. The ANC have had a lot to say about the Middle East, which is frankly outside of our sphere of influence and which has very little impact on South Africa. It is a completely different situation with Ukraine. South Africa is a major exporter to the European Union. South Africa is a major importer of Ukraine's produce, particularly grains and basic foodstuffs and cooking oil, and is going to be absolutely devastated, particularly poor South Africans, by the rising cost of food and fuel over the coming weeks and months in South Africa, which is one of the reasons we've requested the debate. So I don't think you can try and find moral equivalence continuously and try and say, but you don't talk about this, but you talk about that. If something is wrong, it is wrong, and we must speak up against it. I've been very clear. Our position on the Middle East is identical to the official position adopted by the South African government. We believe in a two-state solution with an independent Palestine living in peace next to an independent Israel. There is not even a crack of a difference between South Africa's official government policy and the Democratic Alliance's policy on the Middle East, which seeks to ensure that there is a peaceful solution to that crisis.
Except the DA has never condemned the bombing of Palestinian
That is not
homes.
true. That is not true. And I would encourage you to go back and have a look at the statements released by the Democratic Alliance's Darren Bergman. We were very critical of the violence that had taken out there. But again, this is exactly the red herring that the ANC is trying to get the media sucked into. Because if you can get everyone talking about the Middle East, they're going to ignore the situation that's unfolding in the Ukraine. We're not going to play that game. We are talking about Ukraine, and we're talking about the fact that in a few weeks' time, cooking oil, which has already gone up by over 22% between February last year and this year, February, is going to go up even further. So whatever money you've given to people, increase their social grant, the 350, etc., is going to be completely wiped out by rising taxi fares, by cooking oil going up, and by other basic foodstuffs going through the roof. That's going to cause hardship and suffering for the people of South Africa. We have an intrinsic interest to make sure that the situation is resolved in Ukraine and Russia.
All right, that was DA's John Steenhuisen, who's meeting with Ukraine's ambassador, just offering the party support to the people of Ukraine. Some very strong words there for the government by Steenhuisen, saying their position to abstain is merely a veneer of impartiality when the government has in fact picked a side, so he says.